Welcome everyone. This would be episode 3 where we're looking at a minister and his or her relationships. So far, with our special guest, Pastor Paul Hodgson, we talked about a minister and his or her relationships with God, and then his or her relationship with himself or herself. So I want to encourage you, if you haven't watched the previous 2 episodes, please make sure to do so. Today, we are looking at a minister and his or her relationships with the spouse. So again, welcome, Pastor Paul. Thank you for being here with us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So let's start with this. Tell me more about your relationship with your wife.
Well, I'm a bit of a freak, I suppose. I didn't get married until I was 40, just literally turning 40. The Bible says that he who finds a wife finds a good thing. And I finally found a wife who truly was just that. And Rosario is now in heaven. But we had 27 years together.
Wow.
And when we got married, it was basically not for her to be my assistant pastor, because I'd been a pastor for 15 years. I married her for her, to be my wife. And she was wonderful in terms of the way that she supported me in that, the way in which she was in every single service, even once we'd had our first child. She brought the baby to every service, midweek meeting and so on. And she was always there for everything. She didn't do very much up the front. There were certain occasions when she did lead a service, and 1 or 2 times that she preached a word. But basically, she was there as my wife, not as my assistant.
Yeah. Or just being the pastor's wife, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we look at it from that perspective, how can a minister serve his or her spouse?
Well, first and foremostly, I was her pastor. I remember another pastor in America, actually, who became a friend to some degree, and he said that there was an occasion when his wife was at home and there was a problem at home. And he was so busy in the ministry and he was at the church. And his wife called and said, said his name and said what the problem was. And he said, oh yeah, I'll be there in a while. And he put the phone down and the Lord said to him, who is your wife's pastor?
Wow, that's a good question.
And all of a sudden he said, oh dear, yes I am. So he got in the car and he went straight home and he was there with her.
Wow.
And so yes, I was her husband and her pastor, and that particularly came out in that very short period, which seemed like a very long period, when she was ill and she was going to be with the Lord. And it wasn't I stopped being her husband, but majorly during those 6 weeks, I was her pastor.
Yeah.
And I was with her in that respect, in praying for her, and in supporting her and being there for her in every way, right to the end. As
That's
her
powerful.
pastor.
That's powerful. In terms of the relationship at home, as you know, there's a lot of stuff that can happen within church life and ministry, and I've had to learn and still learning to a degree, but there is this temptation of bringing everything that happens in church life and in ministry into the home, and sometimes basically the question is, what are some of the aspects of a minister's serving at church or in wider ministries that he or she can or should bring home, and other aspects that shouldn't be brought home. if that makes sense.
Well, my wife, when we first got married, did feel kind of left out of things. And so I had to learn, to include her.
Yeah.
So I think that it's good for a pastor's wife or whoever, a minister's spouse, to be aware of the major things and the basic things that are going on in a day-to-day way. And so, I mean, we prayed together every single morning. From the day we were actually married till the end, we would pray together every single morning.
Can I just ask, how would that look like? Like, how much time were you spending every morning together? Because she was working as well, right?
She was working.
Yeah.
And so it was basically her waking up in the morning, I'd take her a cup of coffee in bed, and from then we would pray. It was as simple as that.
There's something to learn for all ministers. Thank you.
So we would pray for about 10, 15 minutes every single day.
Wow.
And obviously praying for people in the church, and also very particularly praying for our children once they came along.
Yes, yes.
We prayed for our children every single day, and I still do.
And in terms of, so the way you would encourage a young minister to make his or her spouse feel included, how would that look like in terms, so if something goes, maybe there's a conversation you have with people and they say stuff that sort of hurt, how much of that conversation do you share with your spouse and how much you sort of...
I think obviously there's confidentiality as well involved here. And so if a man tells me about some problem that he's having or whatever, I'm not going to talk to my wife about that.
Yeah.
If a woman did, I would say to her, I'd like to share this with my wife, and maybe she can talk to you as well.
Yes.
And we will certainly be praying for you.
Yes, yes.
But I wouldn't want to be, I didn't, over those 27 years, burden my wife with lots of details or individual conversations. It was much more general than that.
Yeah, it's more like I've had a conversation with this person. I cannot share exactly what, but please pray for him or pray for her, right? Something on those lines.
Maybe, yeah.
So there needs to be like a right balance between including our spouse, but also not going into things that shouldn't really necessarily be shared because of privacy as well, right?
Yeah, and also there were things I didn't want to burden her with.
Yeah.
So, I think you have to be careful about that as well.
Yes.
They're my problems in a way as a minister, and I'm giving that problem to God, not burdening my spouse with that.
Yeah, that's very wise. Thank you for that. In terms of when we look at a minister's spouse, whether it's the wife or the husband, what advice would you give to someone whose spouse is a minister?
Whose
spouse is a minister.
Oh, okay. Well, be supportive. I think that would be the best word to use. Because, and try to understand from their point of view what the responsibilities are and what the burdens are.
Yeah.
Because if you're not careful, you can make things more difficult for the minister.
Yeah.
If you're making demands on them while they're also trying to deal with other big issues.
Yeah.
So I think particularly for me it was when I'm just about to start a service or I'm just about to do a big event, I really don't need family things or other problems to be brought in and put onto my shoulders at that point. Do it straight after, but not just before.
Yes,
and I'm sorry to say that did happen a few times.
Yeah. I relate to that. Now, Naomi, my wife, and I have like a rule. which we say we don't argue on Saturday or Sunday morning, because we need both of our hearts, because we minister in different ways at church, but we need both of our hearts to be totally in sync with what God does, and sometimes burdening one another with different things can wait. And Saturday evening or Sunday morning, it may not be the best. But we have this little rule at home. Let's not argue. And guess what? That's when we're most tempted to argue. But I understand what you mean. Like, be supportive and understand the calling that is, or the gifting and the calling that the minister has. Support them through that, and then we can deal with stuff later.
Yeah.
All right, that's what you're saying. Now, in terms of the expectations that people may have from minister's spouse, right? Because, I mean, I know even from, again, my limited experience so far, people mean well, but some of the expectations they may place, in my case, on my wife or on a minister's spouse, they can be a bit hard to deal with for both the minister and the spouse. So how can a minister and the spouse deal with expectations others put on the spouse specifically because of their relationship with the minister?
Yes, it is true that people have their expectations. They don't always necessarily express them. They may talk behind your back.
Yeah, and that hurts.
Or they may just put up with things. But I think that hopefully what we want to foster within a local church, if that's what we're talking about now, what we want to foster is love, acceptance and forgiveness. And that should apply to everybody. Yeah. We should all be loving one another. We should all be accepting one another just the way we are. And we should all be forgiving one another when somebody doesn't do what you think they should be doing. And, I think, particularly in terms of forgiveness, I like the definition of forgiveness as forgiveness is releasing other people from your own expectations of them or your own judgments of them. And I think that needs to be taught to a church as well, that we need to release each other from what we expect from each other. Because otherwise it can cause lots of different conflicts, and that can very much come back onto a minister's spouse. That there are expectations put on them, and again it's a two-way thing. If somebody puts expectations on you and you feel judged or whatever, then you have to forgive them for that. But at the same time, I think it's great if we can learn those principles within church life.
Yeah. I think this is linked to what you were saying in a previous episode about the fact that the spouse, so my wife, she is Naomi, a daughter of God with her gifting from God. And yes, she happens to be the pastor's wife, but that's not all she is. She's called by God to minister within her gifting to the people that God has brought us together. And at least I can say definitely for Vision Church, like we've encountered a lot of grace from people who know my wife as Naomi, not as Vlad's wife, not as pastor's wife, even though she is both of those things. And I think what makes a church powerful and fosters this culture of forgiveness and grace is to approach or relate to the pastor's wife or the spouse of the minister as an individual called by God who is in a relationship with the one who is the minister. And like this, when we see that person as an individual, all of a sudden we can treat her as a human, who no one is perfect, of course, and we can show that grace and forgiveness you're talking about, rather than place heavy burdens they're not even aware they're carrying because of my unspoken expectations, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Very good.
So thank you, Paul, once again for sharing from your experience and wisdom, especially on this important topic of a minister relationship with his or her spouse. God bless you.